For the first time in count 'em, 2 decades, the Minnesota Timberwolves advanced to round 2. I got our guy, Jack Borman. He's going to help us break it all down. It's all coming up next on the Locked On Wolves POSTCAST.
You are Locked On Wolves POSTCAST, part of Locked On Minnesota on the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
What's up? What's up? Back in the lab, back at it. Another T-Wolves POSTCAST episode right here on the Locked On Sports Minnesota Network. Jack's got the broom. You got myself, Luke Inman, at Luke_Spinman. Make sure to follow Jack, by the way. He's been ripping out some fire tweets the last 20 minutes on X, at JRBorman13. And Jack, before we jump into all the action, quick reminder, you can always find all our Locked On Sports Minnesota content wherever you find your podcasts. And remember to like and subscribe. Help us get to 8,000 subscribers. We would be so, very, very grateful. All right, buddy. Game 4. Here we go. Quick snapshot. Quarter by quarter. Wolves come out shooting. It was Brick City, man. Ice cold. 23% field goal percentage in the first quarter. He started the night 0 for 4, but they were only down 1, 26-25. Second quarter, this was the cat we've been waiting for this playoffs. He led the way, 10 points in the second quarter alone. Rest of the team, they shot just 8 of 20, 1 of 11 from 3 the first 18 minutes of the game for the Wolves. Meanwhile, Suns, they had that backdoor cutter going like a well-oiled machine. KD, Booker, they go buck wild, 22 in the second quarter alone. Wolves go into halftime, down 5, 61-56. Okay, third quarter we go. This is when the punches really started flying, man. This is when the intensity, it felt like, really got amped up. Wolves start with an 8-0 run. Camp scores the first 4, and he was just everywhere on the glass early on in that third quarter. Ant got the 3 ball, finally cooking, a little warmed up. But again, tough to stop Booker. Felt like he just lived at the free throw line tonight. Every time the Wolves scored, Booker came back down, drew a foul, 37 points through 3 quarters. Guy was an absolute monster all night. Rudy Gobert, by the way, in that third quarter, on the bench for most of that quarter with those 4 fouls. So to the fourth we go. Wolves in a nail-biter. They cut the lead to 2, 92-90. Conley hits 2 monster three-pointers. Ant switches his shoes. I saw your notes. I didn't notice. He switches his shoes at the 7-minute mark. Activated beast mode, apparently, then up 6 with 2 minutes left. We'll get into this a little bit later, but Mike Conley gets shoved into Chris Finch by Booker. Finch goes down, holds that right knee in pain, kind of held things up for a few minutes. More on that a little bit later again, but up 4, 20 seconds left, and he puts the finishing touches on Phoenix, a monster jam to ice it. They send the Phoenix Suns packing into what should be a very long offseason for the Phoenix Suns. And your Minnesota Timberwolves, they've done the impossible, Jack. They sweep the Phoenix Suns 4-0. And the magic that is this 2023-2024 season, it continues as they advance to round 2, riding high with a lot of momentum now. Kick us off. Biggest takeaways, topics first and foremost. What do you got?
Yeah, first and foremost, I really hope Chris Finch is okay, because that did not look good. And I know from firsthand experience being in that locker room how much everybody in that locker room loves Chris Finch and adores Chris Finch. There is not one guy in there that does not have overwhelmingly positive views of Chris Finch. And for Mike Nori to step in for Chris Finch and draw up an absolute banger ATO to get Anthony Edwards a full runway to the rim for a dunk to go up 6 with 19.5 seconds left. That just sums up the Wolves coaching staff all season long. Mm-hmm. They have done such an incredible job of working together and coming together and finding a way in super adverse circumstances. And that is absolutely what happened at the end of this game. I know, you can look at it and say, oh, well, the Wolves are up 4 with a minute 41 left with going to the line for 2 free throws when Chris Finch is out. When Chris Finch goes out, they should win the game. Yeah. But that was a massive energy shift in the arena. And if there was ever something that could totally shift the balance of a game, maybe make you miss 2 free throws or something, that is it. So the way that the Timberwolves banded together and got that done was awesome. I thought it was very emblematic of Chris Finch, and that, no matter what happens, no matter what the game throws at you, you just stay even keeled, you get the job done. And it was really cool to see the Wolves band together and finish that game really strongly the way that they did. But Man, I mean, I don't know how your first takeaway outside of that can't be Anthony Edwards. I mean, this kid is an apex predator of the highest order. He had 40 points, second career 40-point playoff game. He passed Kevin Garnett that's his 8th 30-plus point playoff game in his career. I believe this is Ant's 15th playoff game of his career, and his free throw points per game number is only going to keep creeping up and up and up. I think there's only like 3 or 4 guys in NBA history right now who have a higher playoff scoring average than Anthony Edwards, which is absolutely crazy to think about. So get this. Anthony Edwards started the game 0 of 5. His first field goal, I believe, was at the 5:17 mark of the second quarter. From there on, he shot 12 of 17 and scored 35 points over the final 29 minutes of the game.
Come on.
I think he had like 30 points in the second half alone, which is absolutely unbelievable. I mean,
I think Jim Pete or Grady, 31 of his 40 points scored in that second half. To your point right there. Yeah.
And one of my favorite things about this game from Ant had 7 points at the free throw line.
Come on now.
And still only had 9 fewer points than Booker, who had 20 points at the free throw line. I mean, just the way that Anthony Edwards was able to completely take over the game in the second half of the second game in a row was incredible. I think he had 18 points in the fourth quarter last night. And then for him to have another 30-point second half the way that he did tonight was incredible. I just think that he's got all the confidence in the world right now. Thank you, RP, for that. 31 in the second half. He's just got all the confidence in the world right now. And the way that he stepped up to the challenge defensively, he was a strong side corner defender ready to tag a roll, and instead rotated all the way to the opposite side of the rim and blocked a Devin Booker shot with the wrong hand. I mean, the kid is an absolute psycho with the way that he was able to rotate off of that and get a block. And then I think he blocked Devin Booker right at the end and talked a bunch of trash to him right at the end there, which I thought was fantastic. He just hit all the right notes, man. I thought the way that he stepped up to try to guard Bradley Beal and completely take him out of the game was awesome. Bradley Beal ran his mouth, said a lot of things leading into this playoff series, said, I'll be damned if we get swept. Talked about when he got to Phoenix, all he wanted to do was play in the playoffs because, he played for the Wizards team that after John Wall retired or left or got traded, whatever the case was. I think he got traded to Houston and then essentially retired after that. Yeah. Didn't play in a whole lot of playoff games. And for him to come to Phoenix and play the way that he did, it has to be pretty disappointing for Phoenix, considering he's like the 5th or 6th highest paid player in the league. And beyond Ant, you got to give a ton of credit to Karl Anthony Towns. I thought, Karl's had a lot of pretty incredible games in his career. That game 1 in Memphis 3 years ago, whatever it was, 2 years ago, 3 years ago, whatever it was, comes to mind as an incredible game. But I think the way that Karl played on both ends of the floor in this game was absolutely incredible. He was super composed offensively. He took a ton of really smart shots. I thought the way that he came out in the third quarter and set a tone. I want to talk about his third quarter really quickly to start off. Karl scored the first 4 points of the third quarter, hauled in a contested defensive rebound, and then got an offensive rebound in that short corner and dumped it to Ant. Ant hit that first 3 of the third quarter, and that's really what got Ant going. So for him to score assist on the first 7, Ant then steps into a 3 on the next possession, which was huge. And then right after that, they put 2 on Ant to try to take away a 3, and it opens up a Jaden McDaniels dunk. It was an 8-0 run, completely started by Karl Anthony Towns, and he played with that same force, that same, kind of tailored aggression or kind of smart aggression the whole game. He had 15 points in the first half when no one had anything going. Mm-hmm. I know we've said it a lot in these postcasts after this series, but the Timberwolves had absolutely everything go against them in the first half. They couldn't make a 3 to save their life. The Suns were getting a ridiculous amount of free throw calls in the first half. Anthony Edwards couldn't make anything in the first quarter and a half. Rudy Gobert was in foul trouble. Jaden McDaniels, they're trying to get Jaden McDaniels in foul trouble. Nikhil wasn't making anything. Nas wasn't making anything. And they're only down like 5 at halftime because Karl has 15 points, which was huge. And then, the Timberwolves, I think, started 1 of 11 from 3. And after that, what do they go here? They go 4 for 14 for 25 from three the rest of the game, which is pretty incredible over 2.5 quarters. But for Karl overall tonight, he had 28 points, 10 rebounds, 3 assists, 0 turnovers. He was 11 of 17 from the floor, 4 of 6 from three. I think his shot mix was pretty good, and all of his shots were right around the rim. He had a couple of tough mid-range makes that were huge. But again, didn't really have. He had maybe one dumb foul, I thought, crashing the glass offensively. But
sure,
I'd rather have him do that, considering the way that he's been offensive rebounding the basketball in this series.
Mm-hmm.
I thought he played all the right notes, and then defensively, the way that he slid his feet in isolation was incredible. There was one possession in particular on Devin Booker where Devin Booker kept trying to skate in front of him and dance with the ball in the right slot, and Karl consistently forced Devin Booker to the middle of the floor where he knew that he had nail help. It's that type of defense that's really important, not getting beat baseline to then when you're really on an island in an empty corner. I thought the way that, he knew he was going to have to be out there for longer stretches at the 5 with Rudy in foul trouble, and the way that he defended, I thought was incredible for someone like him. Obviously, there were a few plays there where, you mentioned it off the top, where the Timberwolves played a lot more at the level coverage. So Karl Anthony Towns was up in coverage, and the Suns were back cutting a ton, specifically in those sequences, and they probably scored 6 or 7 times just in the second quarter alone. And then the Wolves really figured that out in the second half. I don't think they got back cut in the second half. Maybe they got one back cut,
maybe one. I was going to say, maybe one.
But the way that Karl Anthony Towns contested shots in the mid range and ran guys off the 3-point line without then also getting beat all the way to the rim more than he did, I thought was incredible. I think, again, when you add in the stakes, how efficient he was offensively, how no one else was giving anything in the first half of this game, I think it was the best game of Karl Anthony Towns' career.
I was just going to ask you, where does that game rank for Cat among his playoff games? So you just answered it right there. I just want to jump in real quick, and I know we got to move on to segment 2, but per our guy Random Planet, shout out RP, per Shams, Chris Finch feared to have a torn patellar tendon after that collision tonight. So maybe just initial gut reaction when you hear something like that. Terrible.
Yeah, I mean, just awful, man. Really hope that he's able to get that fixed and get back to coaching and doing so comfortably as quickly as he can. I mean, the Wolves are going to have a week off at minimum.
I was just going to say,
which is really going to help. So
yeah, can you imagine having to play in 2 days? Having to play on Tuesday in Game 5 or something? That would have been brutal situation, just logistically for sure. But definitely no good.
I don't know if that's like you got to have surgery once you get back to Minneapolis, or you got to stay. Like, I have no idea what the.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm sure what. Obviously, we're doing the live stream right now. People are going to watch this tomorrow morning. I'm sure you'll already have a lot more information by then. All right, plenty more deep dive on the Wolves Game 4. That's all coming up right after this. Quick reminder, tonight's episode brought to us by LinkedIn. When you start hiring for your small business, you want to find quality professionals that are right for the job, right? Obviously. Well, then LinkedIn Jobs is a no-brainer, because LinkedIn Jobs has the tools you need to help find the right professionals for your team faster, and it's for free. LinkedIn isn't just another job board. It's the only job board, because they've got the biggest network to choose from with more than 1 billion professionals. LinkedIn is going to give you access to professionals you just can't find anywhere else, and they do all that while also making the process so easy and so intuitive. So easy, in fact, 86% of small businesses get a qualified candidate match within just 24 hours. So it's time to join the 2.5 million small businesses that are already using LinkedIn for hiring. Try it today. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/LockedOnNBA. That's linkedin.com/LockedOnNBA to post your job for free. LinkedIn, terms and conditions apply. I know we got to touch on Mike Conley here, but just real quick, I just want to bring it up. I know as a talker kind of all night long, especially with Jim Pete and Michael Grady on the broadcast. I know this is playoff basketball. We kind of touched on it the other night. And you can't say the refs swallowed the whistle, because there was a ton of fouls called tonight on both sides. But maybe some really questionable calls against Minnesota tonight. And I don't know. You call me out. Maybe I've got Homer glasses on, and Phoenix fans would say the same thing. You know what I mean? But Jim Pete, man, his blood pressure, it felt like it was through the roof. Watching Booker get to the line, almost 20 times tonight. So what was your opinion, I guess, of the refs? I don't really like to spend a lot of time on this, to be honest. You know that. But, how maybe it dictated the game, specifically the free throws for both teams? Because, again, I know the Wolves had, 15 free throws in the first quarter? Did they not?
Yeah. So funny enough, in the NBA this season, no team had made 14 free throws in the first quarter all season until Game 3 when the Suns did it. And then the Wolves did it tonight in the first quarter of Game 4. So, just a ton of whistles, man. I mean, the game last night or a couple nights ago lasted almost 3 hours, and this one lasted damn near 3 hours as well.
Yeah.
Which is pretty crazy to think about for NBA games. I think most of them are done in 2 hours and 15 minutes almost every time. I just think, more
elbow to Jaden, Lando Lake's calling it the elbow to Jaden, the push Conley. I mean, some of it's ticky-tacky, for sure. Easy to say when they're going against you. But, go ahead.
The one thing that I will say is that when there are 3 or 4 bad calls that get strung together in a row, then it makes it feel like everything after that is also a bad call.
Sure.
So there were definitely some of those. And look, Devin Booker is one of the most skilled players in the NBA and does an amazing job of creating space in such a fluid way that it doesn't really look like push-offs. Like, I think the biggest reason why Karl Anthony Towns gets a terrible whistle is because he doesn't do almost anything other than shoot the basketball fluidly. Like, everything is herky-jerky. Same thing with Jokic. Everything he does is super fluid. Same thing with Embiid. He may flop, but he does it somewhat fluidly to a point where it doesn't look awkward. And a lot of Karl's push-offs and hooks just look so awkward that it draws your eye, to wanting to call a whistle so much more.
Right.
And that's why I think it feels like for some Wolves fans, why the threshold for what is deemed a foul seems so much lower for opposing players than it does for the Timberwolves. And then with Ant, you have the LeBron factor of he's just so damn strong that, and he doesn't almost ever flop that, it's hard to officiate a guy like that. So I think Booker really got away with a lot of off-arming and pushing off. And if you look at every single screen that he set as a small guy, like trying to screen Karl Anthony Towns, he just had malicious intentions almost every single time. That was my biggest problem with Booker, more than all the fouls that they were giving him, is every time he went to screen Karl Anthony Towns specifically, he was just on some dumb stuff. You had the situation where he tabletopped Karl 2 days or in Game 3. And that was called a foul on Jaden, which was crazy. But yeah, I mean, again, it's just another thing. I mean, it totally broke up the rhythm of the game in 3 of these 4 games. And you think about the first half of Game 2 and then really all of Game 3 and all of Game 4. And you think of how many people are in foul trouble. The Wolves kept their composure throughout all of it. And that's just such a great bullet point to keep coming back to and to remember throughout the rest of the playoffs, is that, this team did not do a great job of keeping their composure in the regular season in terms of getting technicals, but they really have not had that issue whatsoever in the playoffs. And I think that's a really important thing to remember as we continue to go forward here.
People are going to wake up tomorrow morning and see Mike Conley shot 2 of 10, but obviously so much more to the story I know you want to dive into there, especially the fourth quarter. Mike Conley was outstanding, was it not?
He was incredible. The Timberwolves scored 32 points in the fourth quarter, I believe, and he has scored or assisted on 16 of them. And I think what he did in the first part of the quarter was incredible. When you think about, like, I got terrible vibes at the start of the fourth quarter when the Timberwolves rolled out Conley, Alexander Walker, Nas, Slow-Mo, and Rudy. That is not a lineup that has been great for them, seemingly of late. But the way that Mike Conley made those 2 huge threes, Nas obviously got that bucket off the bounce to go right away. And then Mike makes 2 ginormous threes to help kind of stem the tide until Karl and Ant get back in the game and get in the flow. And then when Mike got that offensive rebound, I think they were up 1. Mike gets an offensive rebound out of a crowd off a missed 3, I think it was.
When is this? Is this fourth?
This
fourth
is
quarter, right?
Midway through the fourth quarter.
Okay.
For Mike Conley to just jump in amongst the trees, get an offensive rebound and kick it out to Karl. And then Karl drives and gets an and 1 and they go up, I think 3. as a result of that. I think it's just those little plays. He was so huge. And then when Ant would kick the ball out to Mike could have kind of monopolized the ball and tried to get everything organized and tried to figure things out. But he really just then gave it right back to Ant and said, no, I got full confidence in you. You're going to finish this thing. And then what does Ant do when that happens? He steps into a 3-pointer from Tempe that goes down. And that was kind of the start of the avalanche. And so I think Mike just knows when to press all the right buttons. And then when he's making shots too, it's just such a huge thing. And I know that he didn't play awesome in the first 3 quarters, but what he was able to do in that fourth quarter to help get them over the top, like you said, is totally not going to get remembered, in a box score, but just unbelievable for, just for a team that was getting so much from Karl Anthony Towns and Anthony Edwards to get something from someone else was huge.
All right, don't go anywhere. We're going to preview this Wolves Nuggets or Lakers. Who knows? We don't know yet, but that's all coming up right after this. Quick reminder, tonight's episode brought to us by BetterHelp, because sometimes in life, we all need the opportunity to get something off our chest. Could be big, could be small, but sometimes certain things can just really start to get at you. And it's so important to let it out, especially to someone who's unbiased in your life. And that's why there's therapy with BetterHelp. And therapy, it can look different for everyone, because most of us, let's face it, most people have bigger problems than who the Vikings just drafted this weekend or how far the Timberwolves are going to go in the playoffs this year. And that's why it's so important to get things off your chest every once in a while. So if you're thinking about starting therapy, you should definitely give BetterHelp a try. It's entirely online, and it's designed to be flexible and suited for your schedule and time frame. So go visit BetterHelp.com/LockedOnNBA to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/LockedOnNBA. I asked you this in Game 3. I'm going to ask you again in Game 4. Best play or best moment of Game 4 was what? What's the one thing you'll always remember from Game 4 Wolves Suns when we look back?
Yeah, I think it's got to be the Ant dunk over KD.
God, that was great.
It capped off him just absolutely annihilating them in the half court. He had that crazy mid-range over Beal. He had 2 or 3 huge threes, and had him put him up 4 with like a minute and a half left. I thought that was huge. That was the best play of the Timberwolves season.
You're speechless.
I mean,
not often Jack Borman's
Collins,
speechless, folks, and you're speechless right now. I think that speaks volumes right there, right?
The kid is incredible, man. It's one of those moments where you have to. I've caught myself doing this so many times in the last 48 hours. I didn't go to bed until 3:30 on Friday night, and I had an 8 o'clock time in Stillwater, which is about a 40-minute drive for me. So I got up at about 5:30.
You were running on fumes.
I was running on 2 hours of sleep.
Yep.
I was in the car listening to just music, and the whole entire time, I don't remember any of the drive, but I can remember thinking to myself, like, this is crazy that Anthony Edwards plays for the Timberwolves. And I'd be standing over a putt and have to back off because I'm just like, dude, this guy is going to be here for the next 15 years. Like, this is unbelievable.
He's slowly evolving, Jack, into the face, not of the team, not of the franchise. And you know what I'm going to say? The face of the NBA. Of course, LeBron, Steph Curry, KD. But over the next few years, man, am I being Homer? Should I take off the Homer glasses? Is this not the face of the NBA coming up in a couple years?
No, I mean, the biggest thing for me, too, is like, how many guys can you say with a bullet right now are better in the NBA than Anthony Edwards in the playoffs that are still alive? Probably one, Jokic. That's it. And Jokic is in the crosshairs now. I mean, the other thing, too, is like the way that Anthony Edwards completely raises his game in the playoffs, that he's not like an Embiid player or a Harden player where his numbers generally dip in the playoffs. His numbers actually get a lot better in the playoffs because, you generally don't get as many ticky-tack foul calls, and he's used to not getting those calls. I mean, it's incredible to see the way that it scales up. But I want to get into just one other thing. I know you said you wanted to get into a couple team things here before we preview the next series here really quick. I want to point out how important it is that the Timberwolves are able to lean into their big identity in this series. We knew that the Timberwolves were going to struggle with turnovers a little bit because the Suns just plug up the gaps, and teams that plug up the gaps are generally going to be able to, and are more aggressive, kind of swarming the ball and pick and roll, are generally going to give up more points, but they're also going to create more points off turnovers and get out and run a little bit faster or a little bit better. And so in this game, Phoenix generated 25 points off of 12 Minnesota turnovers, while the Wolves generated just 14 points off of 12 Suns turnovers. So the same number of turnovers, but Phoenix had 11 more fast break points in this game, or points off turnovers, in this game. But for the Timberwolves to corral 17 offensive rebounds for 17 second chance points is an incredible number, first of all. And for the Timberwolves to do it consistently in this series, the Timberwolves had at least 13 second chance points in every game in this series, and they had at least 17 in 3 of the 4. And points off turnovers was going to be a problem coming into the series because Phoenix is the most efficient transition offense in the NBA. So if you give them opportunities to run, they're going to convert them at a super high rate. There was only one game in this series. It was game 2, or excuse me. It was tonight, actually, where the Timberwolves did not, get up to the same level pretty much of points off of turnovers for Phoenix with their second chance points. Like if you're able to match or exceed what Phoenix is doing in points off turnovers with second chance points, you're living right. And that's exactly what happened in this series. The way that the Wolves were able to negate that is super important, and it's going to be even more important in the next series. Like if you're able to offensive rebound and make everything tough for Nikola Jokic inside and not allow him to fling the ball up the floor and start transition runouts, and you're able to score, convert more misses into makes, doing that. They've done a pretty good job of that this season. And Jeff pointed out, that's a huge reason why their offensive rating in this series, I think, has been higher than it's been in the regular season, because they were able to lean into that big identity. And we saw, glimpses of them doing it in the regular season. They did it for small stretches, but weren't able to do it for super prolonged stretches. I think the way that they leaned into their big identity, they did it a lot more on the defensive end of the floor rather than the offensive end of the floor. But to see them do it really consistently in this series, I think is really important, and is going to be, something that they're going to have to keep doing in each successive playoff series that they have coming up.
Well said. A lot of good nuggets in there. I do want to, what do we got? 7-8 minutes left at most. I definitely want to get into the Nuggets preview real quick, though. I saw this stat pregame. Wolves plus minus off the bench, all-time franchise history in the playoffs. Nickeil Alexander-Walker, number 1 all-time right now, and it's not even close. 65 plus minus plus, obviously, coming into tonight. He ends with a plus 59. It was -6 tonight, but still plus 59, by far and away number 1 on the list, franchise history in the playoffs. Number 2 on the list, Naz Reid, who finishes this series with plus 32 in the plus minus. So I know we talk about the bench all the time, but when you see a stat like that, what's the big takeaway as it pertains to, the talent this team has top to bottom and how huge those two guys specifically were in round 1?
You said Naz and Nickeil?
Yeah, I'm sorry. Yes, Naz and Na.
Yeah, sorry. I was
Crazy.
looking at the comments here. Yeah, I think it's really important. I think it's the best bench duo left in the playoffs, which I think is pretty crazy to think about, but it's also pretty true. Like it wasn't even a good Naz series. He wasn't great against them in the regular season.
Yeah,
and he wasn't great against them in this series, but he's been awesome against Denver all year long. So you got to expect that he'll really want to bring it in that next series, which is huge. And then Nickeil, man, like we've said all year, there've probably been 10 times this season when he's completely swung a game from loss to win or win to more convincing win. I could go either way to win just with his energy.
Moves the needle, man.
I'll remember that third quarter
offense
of
and
game
defense
3 forever. The way that he was able to just hound everybody defensively and then make 4 threes and have that baseline drive dump off to Rudy was excellent. So I think for those two guys to really, Naz to prove it all year long, and then Nickeil to really prove it in this playoff setting, I think it's been huge. And, like we said, it hasn't been so much of a Cat and Naz series, but it's really going to be in the next one with how favorable the matchup that is with Denver not really having much of a rim protector. And Denver also doesn't really have a backup 5 that they use very much. Like they use DeAndre Jordan, but they use him pretty sparingly and doesn't move super well. He's pretty old, so that'll be an interesting subplot to watch.
Oh, well, smooth transition here then. Obviously, we assume it should be Denver, but, we got about 3-4 minutes left here. I'll give it all to you. What changes the most from a game plan standpoint, going from a team like Phoenix to Denver? Is Jamal Murray hurt? I'm seeing that in the comments quite a bit. How huge is it to have all this extra rest right now? Playing on the road in Denver, the altitude, so many different factors we could touch on. I'm going to, give these last 3 minutes to you. You take it wherever you want.
Yeah, if so, Jamal Murray has a calf strain, is what has been reported. He was grabbing at it a lot in the second half of Game 4, and if they lose that game or Jamal Murray is not right, we all know what happens with calf strains. I mean, obviously, Karl had a very severe one. Jordan McLaughlin had a somewhat minor one that he re-aggravated multiple times trying to come back to play and ended up missing most of the season. And then games he didn't play, he wasn't himself. And those injuries are super fickle. So it'll be really interesting to see if he's able to play. And if he doesn't play, how that changes, because Reggie Jackson had a terrible ankle turn and left the arena on, a boot and crutches. So if both of their point guards are banged up, that's going to be really interesting for the Nuggets to watch. And, that may change the calculus a little bit of who you have guard Michael Porter Jr., because if Ant can guard Jamal Murray more effectively and Jamal Murray is limited physically, and then you're able to put Jaden McDaniels on Michael Porter Jr., that's just going to make it really tough for Denver. And I think the more you can have Ant playing on the ball, the less you can have Ant playing off the ball against a really smart off-ball player and great shooter like Michael Porter Jr. It's going to be really interesting to see. And the key for me is, can Karl Anthony Towns continually score against Aaron Gordon? Mm-hmm. I think that's going to be really important. And can Karl Anthony Towns stay out of foul trouble against Nikola Jokic? I think you can honestly make an argument that Karl Anthony Towns has defended Nikola Jokic better than any player in the NBA has over the last 2 years, give or take. Just in the way that he gets physical with him, but doesn't foul, can test shots, and then you have Rudy lurking over the top. Karl deserves a ton of credit for that, and hopefully we'll see it shine again against Denver. But yeah, I mean, the last season you didn't have length on Jamal Murray. That's generally the recipe. The Lakers didn't have any length to put on Jamal Murray in this series. And if you're able to put length on him and he's not 100% physically, it may be tough for the Nuggets. I mean, when Jamal Murray hasn't been 100%, like they really struggled to get out of the first round and then get out of the second round without him. So, we'll end up seeing, we'll see what happens. Obviously hope that he's 100% and he can go, because we want to see these two teams at 100% in a real Clash of the Titans environment. Yeah. So, but yeah, I think if you can limit Michael Porter Jr. as a scorer, I think you really got to like your chances, because Denver's bench, especially in this series, has been wildly up and down with how young they are.
Isn't there a crazy stat out there that, like, when all 5 of those starters are healthy and on the court, like, they haven't lost a home game or something? It's something insane. Like,
wouldn't surprise me.
50 or 60-0 or something insane like that. We'll have to figure that out.
It wouldn't surprise.
Yeah. And you're assuming, by the way, it sounds like no chance Lakers have any chance to come back on this.
Well, I wouldn't say any chance, but teams are like 154 now in 3-0 situations. So
I get it. All right. Fair enough. All right. Great stuff, man. As always, you're an elite NBA mind. T-Wolves do the impossible. They sweep the Phoenix Suns 4-0. And for the first time in 2 decades, they advanced to round 2 of the playoffs. Anthony Edwards, a legacy type of playoff performance tonight. Now we wait. All eyes on the Nuggets, but a week of rest for your Minnesota Timberwolves. Now, as always, huge shout out to all you guys that joined us on the stream. Rest assured, we'll be back each and every game, same time, same place, right here to break it all down. And quick reminder, go check out all Jack's work on Twitter at Borman13, and make sure you check him out and the entire crew on the Minnesota Basketball Party each and every Wednesday. Can't wait till that episode drops this Wednesday.
I've got one more thing. If I can.
Go ahead. Empty the clip, baby. Yeah, we got about 60 seconds. Go ahead.
Kevin Durant on Timberwolves, Anthony Edwards. Quote, yes. So impressed with Ant, my favorite player to watch. Just grown so much since he came into the league. His love for the game shines bright. That's one of the reasons I like him the most. Love everything about Ant, end quote. That's all I got.
Boy, that is beautiful, man. Unbelievable. All right, don't forget to Ben Beacon, always ripping it up over on the Locked On Wolves podcast each and every day as well. All right, that'll do it for us tonight. That's Jack. I'm Luke. We'll see you for round 2. But until then, signing out.